Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Movie Show, Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
Hello there. I'm Ryan.
And, we're hopefully going to be a little respite from what was, by and large, a pretty crappy week. The world's burning and just things are all around pretty crappy. At least from my standpoint. I don't want to speak for Ryan, but I think he would agree.
Things are appalling. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So we're hoping that we can be a little bit of a respite. We're gonna talk about some things today. We got a lot of questions this past week. We did put a call out for questions, and we got a whole bunch of them. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions.
We won't answer all of them.
Some of them
were really neat, old school, Ask Joel and Ryan questions, and this show's mostly reflects what's going on in the world today. So we're going to talk about that,
and
try and some of that.
Some of them will be great when we do our 1920s flapper show. So we'll bring up those questions then. But we will.
I might even dress up for that show. We'll see. I might have an old sailor suit in my closet that I could wear that might be appropriate.
This is the last show. If you watch the show on our video feed, this will be the last show with my Victorian era perv facial hair. I get to shave that off tomorrow. But if we do a flappers show, maybe I'll grow some sort of thin mustache or something.
Nice.
But anyway, so we're, hopefully we can just be a break and a way for you to maybe just set aside things just for a little bit, and we can talk entertainment. And but that being said, what's going on TV and on film is very much,
it does reflect the world. And I think this episode, because we don't do this very often, matter of fact, I've said it before, we deliberately don't do this. We deliberately don't wade into the waters of negativity because we just don't want to be negative all the time. And we sort of avoid current events topics and more salacious pop culture topics because I think they automatically get you there in that negative place. Mm-hmm. And you can be witty or you can be pithy about that stuff, and you can, but ultimately I think that's ugliness. And this week we're going to just dive into a bunch of ugliness, maybe not exclusively, but there's some of that coming. And I think because we got to get it off our chests and talk about some stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think also you can use this show because we got a break coming up. We won't be doing a show next week for 4th of July. And Joel's going to be doing some traveling with the family elsewhere in July. So there's going to be some spotty appearances of us. And this is like a clearing of the decks of some hard feelings that, don't hopefully you guys maybe could be a sympathetic ear for. That's the idea, anyways.
And obviously, I'll say this at the top of the show. Anything that we, if we say, if you want to respond to it, if you want to back us up on something, or if you want to disagree with us vehemently, you can always reach out to us at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and of course on YouTube. If you are watching the video version, you can.
If you have a positive take on anything that we're being negative about, we'll take it. We will welcome.
Oh, absolutely. So again, thank you to everyone who sent in questions. I have seen these questions. We had these questions sent directly to me. Ryan,
I've seen a bunch of them.
Ryan has seen some of them because I needed to some of them I had to prepare him on because I couldn't just off the cuff ask him.
It's not like a question at the end of the show where they really are surprised. We had to put kind of a show in order that made sense. Yeah. Believe it or not, we actually plan these shows a little bit. It probably doesn't feel like it. But
it probably doesn't feel like it, but we do. There's a bit of gray matter, and we heat up the gray matter a little bit to think about this show. But we are just going to go ahead and call this a full episode of Ask Joel and Ryan, OMG, what's happening, LOL.
I have a question. Who gave you the right to play God?
What the hell's going on out here?
Why do I bother?
What is the point in doing anything?
How dare you? What more do you want from me?
I have a question.
All right. So, Ryan, we talked about this, but I can't remember what you said. Do you watch The Boys on Amazon Prime?
No, just to get a flavor of it, because it was the big thing there for a while. It still kind of is. Boys is a really, really smartly made bit of dark satire. The reality is probably all of you are watching it, but me. I found it, especially during COVID when it came out, it was a good thing to watch when you wanted to watch a bunch of stuff, when we were trapped at home with all of our free time, even our work time. I just found it too, I just found the harsh nastiness of it too distasteful for me, and I couldn't get through it. But I did think it was weird that the headlines the last couple of weeks about this recent episode. Are you up to date on it? You watch it?
I am completely up to date. In fact, I just watched the latest episode yesterday.
So you can fill in the blanks for me on this. The Boys.
If you're not familiar,
what's the topic that's going on?
Yeah, here? Real quick, is if you're not familiar with The Boys, Boys is a superhero show, but it is not like a DC universe. It is not a Marvel universe. It is its own universe, and it is a place where superheroes exist. And it's actually probably more accurate to what it would be like if we actually had superheroes in our life right now.
I strongly suspect that that's true.
Yeah. Yes. Because the superheroes are assholes.
And they're run by corporate sponsors, and they're
run by corporation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, you find out that it's not like they were just, the origin stories are not like, oh, this scientist got trapped in a thing and blah, blah, blah. This is we created a drug, and we started injecting it into kids or into people so that it would go in through their pregnancies into these kids, and they grow up as enhanced people, as people with powers. And there's a hierarchy.
Powers lead to enhanced corruption almost 100% of the time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a great line. The character Butcher, who is played by what's his face, Bones from the Star Trek.
Carl Urban.
Carl Urban, thank you. Where he's like,
you've been there for me this whole time, man. I'm happy I could help you. Thanks.
But Carl Urban's character even says there's a joke on the famous on the whole Spider-Man thing. It's like, with great power comes the inevitable something that you're going to turn into a right C word. and that's pretty much what this, this show is. But what has happened?
Yeah, go ahead. No, you're getting to the point.
I was going to say, I was going to get to the point. What we're getting to now is that, it's ultra violent. It's all action. It is swearing and sex and everything. Well, at the end of last season, you found out that one of the newer characters, who was played by. Season? Well, no, I'll just say that there was a character.
Cool, I guess sort of. If we have to do that, but I'm just asking, do we have to spoil it?
Well, there was incredible Nazi leaning stuff going on. Lots of and it was kind of done all behind the scenes, and then all of a sudden everything came forth, and that sort of dipping of the toe into fascism is something that they've continued on in this latest season. And where we're getting now is these characters that so many people really really loved for some reason. They're like, wait,
for some reason.
Well, they're wonderfully performed. They're wonderfully, sure. The actors are doing a great job, but they're like, we're finding out, hey, maybe they're not the good, these aren't the good guys. These are bad. And frankly, they've been bad guys from the very beginning. That's the whole point of the show.
That's just it. There's a bunch of red hat wearing supporters of these characters out there in America. I'll let you figure out who those people are. And they've loved these guys all along. And I don't understand. It's weird that only now, this last couple of weeks, there's been this awakening that they maybe don't like them. I don't know how many murders, brutal, ugly murders, rapes. I mean, the most awful stuff people can do. That wasn't a deal breaker for them. I don't fully understand, because I'm not completely up to date, what the deal breaker finally was. Joel, do you have any idea without spoiling the show? Or was it just because swastikas, Nazis, that's not been a problem for these people? What is the problem? Do we know?
Well, it kind of, it was kind of when, I'm
making it hard on you because I don't know the context. And
the big thing is we're getting things like, the character of Homelander, showing up, and people he has his televised birthday party, he starts going off about the fake news media. The media is lying to you. We have another one talking about all soups matter, all superheroes matter. And
that's been too subtle for them up to this point. That couldn't have been it, or could it have been?
Well, that was really well. And then we have, and then we have everything there's a lot more subtle stuff, the firing of everybody in charge and setting up people and so that you're consolidating.
Either way, when this is a weird place we've gotten in entertainment, and I guess this is what I want to say about it. It is weird that you can just eviscerate all kinds of innocent people and do all the worst acts under the legal code in our current state of America and be still viewed by a massive amount of its viewership as the good guys or the heroes or the guys that you love to spend time with. That's weird to me. And it's weird to me that at any point they could have some sort of awakening. The best thing about Boys is that it's written by people who hate superhero stuff. So at least me, I'm sort of on board with them. They really find find our worship of these people detrimental basically to our psyches. And you can see that as our escapist entertainment has gotten bigger and more exclusive and more omnipresent, what's actually happening in the real world sort of gets worse. It's not the superhero movie's fault, but the massive disconnect in the hopeful, wonderful, aspirational love of power and physique, and what's actually happening in our world is sort of absurd. And they present you this idea of what are superheroes living in a world that's very much like ours. It's a little hyper our world, but it's an amazing show in that way, and it's really, really well put together. But you were never at any point, everybody's compromised in it, but you were never at any point supposed to think these guys were heroes. That's the whole point of the thing. That reveal happens in the first 2 episodes, right where it should happen if you're going to have a high concept show. So I don't know what changed. It can't be them calling out fake news, because that's preaching to the converted. So.
Right. I think one of the things where they really started to realize that they were getting made fun of is after Homelander goes on this big rant about because Homelander gets caught up in some of the Nazi stuff from the previous season. He is on it. This season takes place like 3 years later, and he's been mea culpa-ing, going, hey, I'm just, I may be a superhero, but I'm human just like anybody else. I didn't realize I'm not perfect. And he gets tired of saying that and loses it live on this show. And then comes back, and the audience reaction polls have him. He's gained all these popularity points with white males in the Rust Belt. And so then Homelander's like, okay, that's let's consolidate.
I don't want to have a deep dive on the boys, but
that's what it is. It's
astounding to me that anyone who could take that long watching the show to make that revelation is even capable of making that revelation at any point. And I'm dismayed by the former, but I find the latter to be almost a hopeful thing, because any way that you can look at something and recognize it for what it is when you've been living in your own little bubble, I have a bubble of my own, it's encouraging because what do they say? There has been an awakening,
Yeah, it's
I don't know what to say about that. So let's move on to the next one.
It's bonkers. All right. Well, the boys. So you know what? So frankly, if it took you this long to realize that the show was making fun of you and saying that you are a big part of the problem, congrats on being an idiot for this long, and congrats that all of this is finally catching up with you, and I hope that you feel bad and delete your Reddit account. Oh, that'll show them, you flippin' idiot.
But genuinely, congrats for being able to ever come to that conclusion at some point. That is impressive.
Yeah, it is. God, well, how
now you see why we don't talk about this stuff. I mean, it is impressive. God. If you can be in denial for 3 seasons of The Boys before you realize what's going on, but still realize what's going on, I do think that is a sign of growth. It's maybe a tiny sign of growth, but it is a legit sign of growth, I guess.
All right, so let's. Speaking of growth, and sticking with something for a very long time, Kevin Costner is going to make an epic Western that's going to be 11 hours long.
Yeah, it is 11 hours long. Like, it's sort of pretty much been made. They're still editing it.
I guess you're right. It's pretty much done.
It's going to be released as 4 movies and then a 12-part television series of 40-minute segments or whatever.
Yeah. So 4 movies in the theater that are 2+ hours long, and it'll be interesting to see how people take that. What it says to, if you made something that's 11 hours long, first of all, it's interesting. It's just funny, right? The headline: Kevin Costner's new Western is 11 hours long. It's like, of course it's 11 hours long.
how could he top his last super long, boring movie that he made?
Mm-hmm.
But you know, Kevin Costner making a Western, that probably could be good. But this sounds like a TV series. So why they're insisting upon it being movies first? Look, and even to hear him try and explain why they're doing it this way, like it's not that he's not making sense. It's that he's not making the case. You're not hearing anything. He's like, well, we'll just think people will want to spend time with these characters and blah, blah, blah. Why? So why 4 movies? And then why changing 4 movies to I just don't understand. It's weird.
4 movies that are going to come out about every 3 months. So 2 hours and 45-minute movies.
Yeah.
So they're almost 3-hour-long movies.
Yes.
Every 3 months.
Of a multi-generational, decades-long, Wagons West story, which we've had many of, none of which really are very good. I think something he's going to find is that if you don't stick with the same characters for 11 hours and you just kind of move on to the next group, a la like a James Michener book, there was a time where people liked those types of stories, but we are not living in those times. So to me, the real test of this thing isn't so much its length, because it sounds like it might make a really good TV show or a really good limited series. It's this idea that the TV series, I think, could work. And even if it's a disappointment, I think it could still be a quality thing. It's being 4 movies first feels like, let's put the failure before the success. And because I don't see anybody going to a 2.5-hour Kevin Costner movie, even if it was only 1 movie at this point. I mean, I just don't see that happening. I'm sure somebody would, but that kind of storytelling isn't what's packing people into the cinemas,
Yeah.
So it's weird to me.
I just read, they're like, and somebody, they're like, well, eventually, maybe he'll just wise up and he'll chop it into 11 42-minute episodes. And someone chimed in going, no, we need New Line to purchase Quibi and split it into 66 10-minute bites. That brought me joy. I mean, I guess, okay, so, as COVID is, hopefully as we're potentially coming out of this pandemic and movie, yes, I mean, I guess I applaud the idea of, okay, we're going to try something. I have this idea and I believe in it, and I got New Line behind me to believe in it.
New Line's not even a thing. New Line's just a shingle from Warner Brothers. New Line hasn't been a thing since.
Sorry, I meant Warner Brothers. Sorry.
No, it's New Line. I'm just saying this whole thing is weird that we're talking about New Line like they're a studio. They haven't been a studio since the Golden Compass tanked. So
yeah.
So what are they doing in this conversation? It's weird. Even that part of this is strange. Where did they come from? They haven't been making anything forever. They occasionally have their logo come out on something they used to hold the rights to, all of the Hobbit movies, or like a horror movie that just needs to not be directly associated with Warner Brothers themselves. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's just odd that New Line is putting out a Western. That's weird. Yeah. The whole thing is weird. And yeah, Quibi. I still have a few everything that's coming to Quibi this fall articles bookmarked that I meant to read a few years back, but I never did.
Well, like I said, there was we discovered a Quibi show that eventually got put on the
Quibi,
Roku channel.
New Line.
Yeah.
What WTF? What is happening? LOL. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This whole thing is absurd. Although, I don't know. I really liked his last Western was Open Range. That's one of my favorite Westerns ever. So it's not like Costner can't make a good movie. He absolutely can. But this definitely feels more like a Postman type situation than that.
Right.
We'll see.
So moving on.
Multiple formats over different, let's see how that works.
It's going to be.
I think it's strange.
It's strange. Maybe it'll be great. More than likely, it'll probably be like, oh yeah, that's fine.
I think the films, I think ultimately the films will have pretty limited releases, and this will be more or less treated like the TV show that it clearly is. If you got a story that you want to tell that's 11 hours long, 4 movies released in the same year isn't the way to do it. No one's ever done that. And it's because it's a stupid idea. It really is dumb. Yep. It really is dumb. So we'll see.
So one of the bolder moves that I thought Disney has done in a while was to make a movie based on the toy that was created for a movie in a different movie that we never saw before, but then we had this action figure, and so now we're making that movie that this action figure was based on. I thought that was a bold move. But Lightyear really hasn't been living up to box office expectations.
It had a $50 million opening weekend, which since COVID started is the biggest opening for a digitally animated movie.
Right.
So biggest opening for a digitally animated movie in like 3 years. And it's still being treated like it's just tanked and sucked, which is weird. It is a $200 million big digital. It's supposed to, I think for Pixar, it was supposed to be the big return of whatever.
Yep.
And wasn't, and people are saying, well, there's all these problems with it. At one, they replaced the vocal talent. They replaced Tim Allen with Chris Evans, and Tim Allen's a noted right winger these days. I think it's fair to call him that at this point. He used to be kind of fence riding apolitical cat, and now I think he's thoroughly crossed over into right wing territory. But nevertheless, I mean, he's the voice of Buzz Lightyear, right, to everybody, although technically he is just the voice of the toy, not the character from the movie that the toy was based on. That's the distinction that the studio is trying to make. I get that, but I don't think that was ever, I think that's too complicated to have ever worked out in the world. I think when you replaced him with a different new happening guy, you were asking for this, and you should have been ready with a better answer than that, or you should have been answering it all along. You weren't even really selling the movie as what it was. Joel tripped over himself saying it because it is a little complicated, but this is the movie that the little boy in Toy Story saw that made him want a Buzz Lightyear action figure to begin with. I mean, that's a cool idea. It actually really is a cool idea for extending a franchise, taking it in a different direction, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But then you got Patricia Heaton, she's the big one, you can't get rid of Tim Allen, or everyone's going to hate your movie. You know, Patricia Heaton, whatever. She doesn't even seem to understand the reasons why in her discourse. But I don't think she's entirely wrong. I think that you needed to sort of default to Tim Allen. He's a good actor. Whatever else he is, the Woody that we see on TV is voiced by Tom Hanks. So your argument that they're two different things isn't even really backed up by your own material that you previously made. Everybody loves Chris Evans. I love him, but it's kind of like the bigger thing though is this is more of the Kevin Costner thing again. This really isn't about all that crap. That's the noise going on in the Twitter and Instagram verse. But the reality is, the last 3 Pixar movies were released day and date home on streaming.
Mm-hmm. For free.
It's that, in my opinion, and I know it's only my opinion, I can't prove this, but that's eroding the big opening weekend that they wanted for Lightyear. They didn't get Lightyear day and date, but this idea that people are going to be rushing back into it like it was in the golden age, like it was Up or like it was WALL-E or something, and it was just going to be this huge, massive thing after the paradigm has thoroughly shifted. Everybody out here in the world, or not everybody, because it was $50 million these days at the box office ain't nothing. That's a decent opening weekend. Right. I get that it came in second to Jurassic World or whatever, but it's still that's a recipe for potential success for that. You know, there isn't anything quite like that coming down the pipe for another month or so. So that could hang in and do okay business.
Yeah.
But our need to assign blame to it and are looking to the most obvious lame thing. It's too woke, got too many gay characters in it, all this stuff that are being leveled at it. And that's why a decent amount of people who might have seen Toy Story 3 in the theater but didn't see it. I'll admit that.
Well,
but it's not what made it make half as much as they thought it was gonna.
Funny that you say Toy Story 3, because that is one of the movie people that I follow and really respect on TikTok. He mentioned his theory is because one of the reasons why people aren't flocking to Lightyear is because they're still kind of, not upset isn't the right word, but they're like, you guys made Toy Story 4 after you literally had the most perfect ending in Toy Story 3.
Yeah.
And Lightyear just continues to feel like a money grab. Like, oh, we just got to capitalize on this property that we have, this beloved property that we have. How do we do? Well, here's maybe a new way that we can sort of sneak by, and maybe people will go, oh yeah, no, that sounds cool. And then they kind of, like you said, screwed it up by I mean, I do think that, as much as I have never really found him funny and don't really like him as a person, if you have Tim Allen voicing it, I do think people get a little bit more excited. But you wouldn't have the easy point to this sort of culture war thing to rip on. 'Cause I really do think most families are just waiting for this to hit streaming, and they're just going to watch it there. That would be my guess. Mm-hmm. Well, and we're going to get to some reasons why pretty soon here, later in the show. Why that also it's a much easier choice to make. But let's move on to talking about summer blockbusters. We mentioned Jurassic World Dominion. The line here is audiences are getting summer blockbusters they deserve. So I guess that's sort of done in hot take form, or in
it's more of a hot take. This is like, that's cool. Well, they are, aren't they? I mean, they are. They're getting
if it's 1992.
Yeah, they're getting these piles of. Well, but even in 1992, you would never have a pile of pandering nonsense like this, like you have this year. You know what I mean? And what are the kids growing up today? I don't know what the generation's called, what millennials kids are called. Maybe they're still Gen Zers that are growing up watching only the things that the sequels to the things that their parents liked. This is a phenomena, especially in big movies, that is always been there and is always going to be there. So it's not that the system is broken so much. It's that the fan servicey, just noisy, stupid. I mean, how many Transformers movies do you have to keep going to when they're all clearly terrible? You know what I mean? I mean, it's like 4 really, really super awful movies, and they were all massive money makers for some reason. And you couldn't even really pin down many people out in the world. Well, there are plenty of people who loved them. There must have been. Even the people who liked them, like, are all kind of like, it was pretty stupid, but and it's, if that's your attitude and that's what you're willing to accept, and if you're still going to flock to Jurassic World after 2 absolutely awful movies, when the whole world and all the discourse and all the critical discourse, which it's your right to ignore, but they were all telling you this it's even worse, then you're getting what you deserve. And they're not going to try and make better movies for you if you flock to this garbage, And I get the Star Wars sequels. It was hard to tell whether those were good or not when they were happening. We sat on the show kind of trying to make sense of them and trying to see what we liked about them and didn't like about them. You can make some arguments on either side of those, but I really view Jurassic World films that it started with the Transformers movies, which it's inexplicable to me that there were $4.5 billion worldwide Transformer films when they were all just shit, and we all knew that they were and admitted that they were, and we still all went to see them. I don't understand that mentality. If you're gonna do that, even after you've been sort of slapped in the hand, I get that they're not. I guess I don't know. I mean, I get that they don't offend you with their badness, but they're bad. You know, the Fast and Furious movies are terrible. Nobody talks like the people in the Fast and Furious movies talk. It's one of the weirdest things to watch. It's like, what weird alternate universe does this take place in, where these people with these weird, not so much the first couple of them or whatever, but certainly every one that we've gotten lately. And these are all huge films, and they're all just these sort of, it's hard to explain. It's not real. It's not even a decent attempt at providing its own reality in a blockbuster way. It's not that the action is bad, but the acting and the writing exists in this super odd place that I can't relate to and can't understand and don't know. And it's so badly done that I don't understand how anyone relates to it. Well, nobody does. So are they aspiring to it? I don't get it. It's just really super crappy. I talked about it a few weeks back. I don't remember in the context, but The Rock, he's got a busy schedule because he's the biggest star in the world. And even though he's going to do another Red Notice movie, which we don't need because that movie wasn't good either, but he's turned down, you know, he's not going to do another San Andreas movie. He's not going to do another Rampage movie. He's like, he actually, I'm not a huge fan of The Rock nor his acting style, but he's actually gotten to a place where he's got enough good offers that he's smart enough to not just take the $20 million to spend 3 months of his life on sequels to things that were pretty terrible to begin with for any number of reasons. And even if you liked San Andreas, we know some smart folks who did. You can't, and for the life of you, justify why another movie with those same characters is somehow justified in any realm of reality. It's stupid. So I'm sad about that. And I'm not even ripping on the superhero movies. So superhero guys, you get this segment off. Because those at least are much better made, better written, you know, better everything films. Like, I get the appeal there. The Jurassic World movies are all terrible. Stop tripping over yourself to try and justify what might be good about them. You're not doing yourself or anybody else any favors by doing that. And the more something panders to you, the more sort of upset by it you should be. At least a little upset. You go to a film and just have them talk down to you like you're such a stupid moron and explain every little thing and re-say every stupid catchphrase. I mean, they make the James Bond movies look like super sophisticated by comparison. and up until this point, those had been sort of the worst self-congratulating films ever, really. Yeah. And you're going to keep getting this. Just repeat garbage with an unlimited CGI budget, with a bunch of actors you used to admire doing the worst work they've ever done in their lives, just to make you feel like you felt in 1993. That's terrible.
My 11-year-old son went and saw it with his grandparents, Jurassic World Dominion, and you know that, and you know, the first hour is just like, oh my God, there's dinosaurs in the world and they're everywhere and blah, blah, blah. And he was living it. Oh my God, he was great. And then they were like, clearly it was like, well, we probably should try to shoehorn in some sort of plot. And then my son just goes, yeah, I think we're good. Let's go.
Let's get out of here. He left like, for the whole big island section of the movie, which really is what the movie is. No,
I guess. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it.
I guess. Yeah. I don't know.
But it's like when he was like, "Oh, we're really gonna." He's like, "Oh, well, they're just no, okay." he was just kind of done, going, "I don't know. They're not saying."
Even the
anything.
Dinosaurs in the world part, you know, you do see a couple unfortunate innocent people lose their lives, but for the most part, it's all gags and it's all played for maximum sort of, isn't it funny? This jogger on the beach morning is interrupted by a dinosaur. Isn't it funny that, it doesn't even have, the films don't even have the balls of their own premise to show the horror of what these things are and the way that Crichton clearly meant us to feel and think about.
I was just so two things. Obviously, as as someone who cares a lot and pays a lot of attention to people with disabilities, I'm just like, I have a heart. I don't think we're going to be seeing anybody with any sort of developmental or physical disability in this movie. Probably because they would be just like, oh, look at this little snack. But also, I was listening to a podcast with and Chris Pratt was a guest on there, and he was they were talking about, and I'd forgotten all this. They had done a contest. You could win the chance to get eaten by a dinosaur in Jurassic World Dominion. And so this guy won, and they showed him, they filmed him against the green screen, riding a scooter, and he gets this incredibly gory, violent death. Congrats.
Yay!
What great movie making that is. That is so spectacular.
You guys, it's lack of empathy and storytelling, and it is reflective of the world that you live in, which severely lacks empathy. If that's just the kind of thing you giggle at and you don't feel the horror of it, even if it is silly, I'm telling you, then you're not reacting to the stories of the world in the way that you should. And if the stories are working overtime, and the Jurassic World movies are the worst at this, they're not worse than the Transformers movies. Okay, let's get that straight. But they're worsely made, and as a result, they're bending over backwards to make you not care what happens to people. I get that it's all make-believe and you shouldn't care too much. You shouldn't be traumatized by films, but you should give a shit because the movie gives a shit. And if you're okay with not, then I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say, but I can only lament and just beg that we turn that around, Even when the poor lawyer gets eaten in the first film, you're not giggling about it. It's horrific and really scary and intense. And that's as it should be. That doesn't mean you have to go home and have nightmares about it, but you can take a villain and put them in a terrible situation and they still don't deserve to be eaten alive. Just give that idea some thought for a second, what it would be to be eaten alive by one of these things. And then if it makes you happy, then we just, as humans, I don't think there's a connection that's been lost between us, I guess.
Correct. Let's move on. And
I'm not saying that Jurassic World movies should be dumbed down or made simpler. I'm saying they should be more horrific.
They should be more complicated.
You should feel it a little bit. Absolutely. Or what is the point?
Yeah, agreed. Speaking of what is the point, it's kind of how I know he's beloved by many people, but it's kind of how I feel about any Baz Luhrmann film. Yeah. But some people are thinking that Baz Luhrmann's Elvis might be pretty good here. So good on you, Baz.
I just don't know what to say at this point. It's the same as the Transformers films. How many big, bloated, excessive, inhuman pieces of junk does somebody have to make before you say this can't be good anymore? I mean, I don't get it. This has gotten some good reviews. It's gotten some terrible ones. That's a Baz Luhrmann thing. Some people really, really love him. Some people really, really hate him. There's not a lot of gray area when you're dealing with somebody who is this kind of filmmaker. And I like big, pretentious storytelling, so it's not like I'm against that at all. It's you read a book like Great Gatsby and then you see his masturbatory version of it on screen. And I just don't know how anybody can say this thing has just been destroyed. Like its integrity has just been torn out and stomped on as like a public sacrifice to a event movie going audience that that film, at least, maybe because it had DiCaprio in it or something, was gobbled up.
Mm-hmm.
A biopic of Elvis is just what we need right now. Maybe. I mean, at least it's a movie that's big enough thing, for us to go to. Elvis is a big enough phenomena still, that, we could really use that. Let's dig into that. Let's do an Oscar bait film that has some heft and some dazzle to it. I can live with that. I honestly could. But this looks, I mean, you look at what the things in Elvis's life that they're completely ignoring, everything, basically.
Right.
You see the dazzling excesses with which this stuff is staged. You see the sort of propaganda for the person that you're being just pounded with. All the terrible Freddie Mercury movie that people still love. That movie's just terrible. That's such a horribly, inherently dishonest film that it makes me sick when I watch it. And this is the same, except at least the Freddie Mercury film, the Bohemian Rhapsody, had the small moments where you really did feel the quiet genius of the person. Like it delivered some of that. It delivered some interesting trivia about the band's history in a superficial liner notes sort of way, but still it's there. What could this have? What could this have that isn't all Gatsby'd up? That film was disgusting. I don't know how to put it. It was disgusting. How could you do that to a renowned piece of literature like that? I don't understand how. And how can we let him do that? By supporting him. That his film Australia, the film he wanted to tell the history of the land where he was born and bred, and the Australian government basically gave him $100 million. Hollywood gave him another 100, and he spent this huge $250 million to make this giant, huge, massive 3-hour film that asked the question, how many kangaroo fart jokes would it take to ruin Gone with the Wind? And the answer is what we always knew. It's just one. One brings the whole enterprise crashing down to our feet. It ruins everything. I can't stand Baz Luhrmann. And even the people who Strictly Ballroom's pretty good. Yeah. Strictly Ballroom's pretty good.
Ballroom,
go back in time and hang your hat on that. But everything he's done since he got a budget has been just terrible nonsense. Have you watched Romeo plus Juliet in a while? I don't recommend it.
I hated that thing with the burning passion of 1,000 suns. But here's what I think. Baz Luhrmann, one of the things that he's great at is he absolutely is great, and never is it done to greater effect than in Moulin Rouge. Is he just knows how to bamboozle you with bullshit. He'll do some things that are just kind of like that will make you go, huh, whoa, huh, what, and then you leave going, boy, I must have saw something really cool because I didn't know what I was watching some of the time there. And then when you, and for some people, that's still the case. They're just like, oh my God, I just can't. Oh, the way that movie works and blah, 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 the songs and the emotion. And then but they're like, no, there's nothing there. There's nothing going on. It is absolutely
not much happening. The one,
it's just like, how look over. Don't look at what's going on. Look at my hands.
The one nice thing I'll say about Baz is that it's not none of these films, not one of them is a cynical exercise to rob you of your money. He really believes in this, what he's doing here, his method. Okay.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
And that's not nothing. That's
not nothing. No, none of this is very.
Jesus,
he's not mean. He's not a mean filmmaker.
Well, he's not Michael Bay. He's not. He has his artistic voice. It just not helping. It just isn't helping. It just isn't helping. And I haven't seen Elvis yet, and I will see it. So my opinion will become more informed about it. But I couldn't believe my eyes. All these, it's not just the suburban America, hiding their shame and going to see Transformers 3. This is like, these are the people who are supposed to be into cinema and who care about indie films and stuff. These are all these people who are just way too smart to be bamboozled by a cheap con man like Baz Luhrmann. And yet they either are or they aren't, and they just think each next thing, because it seems like a great idea, is going to be better than the last. There's no evidence that this breaks that trend at all. We'll see. And we've got, I won't go into that, but ripping on a thing before it comes out isn't something I like to do, but I just felt with Baz, I had to put my foot forward and say, why, what has he ever done to make you think that this would actually be decent and would actually be a story that had any humanity reflected in it at all?
Right.
And if that's not what you want, then I don't know what to say, then these are just going to get worse and worse and worse. They really do. I gave the Elton John biopic a pass because I thought because it was rated R, and I thought Elton was pretty honest and hard on himself in the film. And I think that's something to be admired, even if that film has a lot of legend in it and obfuscates a lot of stuff. He's not the good guy in half that movie, and that's important to see because that is kind of how it was. Yeah. So I like that. This is Elvis truly behind the glass. You're not going to get anywhere near that guy in this movie. And if I'm wrong about that, my God, I will happily eat crow on the show because I would love to be wrong about it. It's sad to see all this money, this big cinematic investment, and this truly talented visual storytellers' work just repeatedly go to waste on noisy garbage. I'm tired of it.
Yep. So I hate Bridgerton. Did you watch Bridgerton? Are you watching Bridgerton?
I watched it. I didn't. I watched half an episode on it. Bridgerton's streaming, so you can't just come across it when you're switching the channels.
Right. Yeah.
Does that anymore?
Yeah.
But I haven't because I can't stand the writer of that show, and I hate all her other shows. So I couldn't imagine I would like Bridgerton, even though I am a sucker for a period drama, as you know.
You're talking about Shonda Rhimes.
Yeah, Shonda Rhimes is terrible. I'm sorry to say that because I know Shonda Rhimes does a lot for representation in media, and there's a lot to be admired there, but the show is, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder. What's the medical one that's been on for
Grey's Anatomy?
These shows are cheap soap operas that they condescend to us in a weird way. They deliver to us this sort of soap opera. It's high scale, well-written soap opera, but it's still this sort of soap opera nastiness that just makes us feel like we've seen some salacious thing. And one of the truly terrible things that they've done with Bridgerton, I don't know the books, but they've modernized it, and in terms of everybody gets to play in the period sandbox, the diversity and the casting and stuff, I think is pretty neat. But we're going to bring this kind of story about a very different era, and we're going to leave out all the things that made that era what it was, that made it restrictive, that made it difficult to maneuver in, and we're not even going to make the show about that. Was dismaying, at least. That said, hey, it's Bridgerton. I can just not watch it. That's cool. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like, this isn't some sacred cow or anything. It have fun. We should all have fun watching TV shows. And being a well done primetime soap opera is not the worst thing that you can be. Even if you are Scandal, which I didn't like for various reasons, or you are or whatever. Cool. I'm not too worked up about it.
Yeah, but I only bring it up because we have an upcoming Netflix presentation of Jane Austen's Persuasion,
Go back into the Jane Austen episode and listen to me and Dana talk about Persuasion. Like it's one of our children.
Yeah.
You know, like there's it's more than just we love it because we didn't talk about any of the rest of them this way. That's like a little thing that we want to keep and treasure and protect from the outside world. It really is an important story for anyone who's ever read it or watched it, and who's ever been through an extended period of regret and unhappiness in their life. It's an extremely important tale to a lot of people. Yeah. And this new version of it, this new modernized, they said, version of it.
Yeah, it sounds like it has been. And that's the worry. The question is it sounds like this upcoming Persuasion has
been Bridgerton. It's been Bridgerton. Dakota Johnson, who's the last person that should be playing, although I like Dakota Johnson, she's the last person that should be playing this. Every picture of her involved in this, she's got this bright, sexy smile on her face, you know, like she's so good at. That's just the opposite of what this character is. I can't explain. You know, I get that now I start to sympathize a little bit with the comic book fans who are like, that's not my, you know, whoever, that's not my thing. That's not my Captain what's his face or whoever you guys get upset about. I never really understood that. I'm like, you know, it's got to let the movie be the movie. I get that way of thinking, but you watch the trailer for this. There's a moment in the trailer where she says, you know, we're not just whatever anymore. We're exes. She says exes in the 1800s. You know, she might as well have said my dad lost all his, you know, fortune in crypto. It shocks you out of your chair when you hear somebody talk like that. That's not how people talk. And I just wanted my moment to say, I hate this so much. How could you do this to Persuasion? How could you? That's really how I feel. I watched Little Women a couple of years back with Saoirse Ronan and Emma Watson and everything. And that was tough to take because it had this, you know, sort of jumbled up timeline, and it had all this stuff that it did to this sort of story that you know really, really well. But it still, at its core, was that story. You know what I mean? It was one artist's take on it, but it didn't. It would never have had a line in it. Oh, we're exes. Like, that's not a thing people said, and they know it, and they put it in there anyway. So what else do they put in there? It galls me. And I wanted to say, please, Persuasion. I mean, it's too late now. It's coming out. There's nothing I can do about it.
July.
I can't start a petition, right, Joel? We all know how well those work.
Yep. All right. Well, let's move on to some other subjects here.
I love that story, and I'm so sorry that they shit all over it the way they did. They clearly did, and I'm not really willing to give it a chance. I may watch it or I may not, but I'm not really going to give it a fair shake because they've already shown me they don't even care to get what it actually is. They've got a well done romantic plot that they can hang a Bridgerton style hip and happening thing on, and I just find that shameful.
Yep. A very important question, I think, to discuss here that came up. And we don't normally just do it like, which is better? But this one I thought very important to talk about. Which is a better movie? Which is better? Drop Zone or Terminal Velocity?
Drop Zone.
See, I like Terminal Velocity. Okay. All right. So weekly premieres or episode dumps, just different ways of losing. So we have, weekly, every week, a new episode comes out. That's been the traditional model, obviously, forever, of how we consume shows on television. But now,
if they put all the shows out like the Tuesday after Labor Day, and you'd watch them all, and there'd been nothing left for the entire year.
Yeah.
So obviously they rolled out the episodes as fast as they could make them. Now, starting with Netflix, I mean, it was Orange is the New Black, or I can't remember which show, but something happened where they all came, and we were all like, this wasn't ancient history. It wasn't that long ago. And we were all like, wow, here they are. You can watch them. It's like,
I could just watch the whole thing. Yeah.
It was a massive paradigm shift, and it has its benefits because you can. What a gift that is if you're a fan of the thing, right? To get it all and to watch through it and to spend all Saturday with your favorite whatever. It's fun. So it's not like a bad thing. But I always said, what you lose is, because I remember all the Orange is the New Blacks coming out, and I remember everybody being excited about them for about 3 days. And then I remember nobody ever talking about them for the rest of the year. And I always thought, when Game of Thrones rolls out, it's 1 week at a time and everybody's talking about it as part of the discourse of American entertainment for months. And I do believe that has value for the thing, that it has a life that extends past you're plowing through it just to get through the plot. You can take the time to be into different aspects of it. So what's changed, Joel? What's changed is the way we talk about things. And you saw this, it was extremely pronounced recently with Obi-Wan, and to a lesser degree, because I think it's a lesser watched thing with the Miss Marvel.
Yep.
But the weekly rollouts that Disney does, which normally I would personally be in favor of, because the audiences are so impatient, because they're like me with persuasion. They're so set in what they think everything should be, and anything that defies their expectations, they're so intensely negative about right away. Now, this is setting aside some things we'll talk about later in the show that are just egregious and horrific, but sort of relate to this. But just let's just take the legit criticism and the constant parade of negativity that everything that gets released now has to deal with. I don't think I think it's almost worse now, because you've got to have that week in and week out. Whatever you hate about this new show, you hate is renewed every Wednesday. You know what I mean? And yet you keep on watching this and keep on yelling at the people who like it or try to defend it. And you keep on just ranting and ranting and ranting about how awful something is again and again and again and again for 8 episodes or 7 episodes or 11 or whatever it is. 11? What do you say to 11, Kevin Costner? Let's try that, I think. 11 1 hour. How about? I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. You kind of see what I'm saying? It's like it's now which is better. It's gone from which is better to literally which is worse. They're both terrible. Everything is bad. So I just thought I've done a pivot on that. There, you can't win. It's which way do you want to lose? Do you want all the pain all at once to go with the limited amount of joy that's out there, or do you want to have whatever actress of color that you cast in whatever role just get bombarded with hate for months instead of just over the weekend until people move on to something else?
Right.
These are literally the things they have to choose. They know that when they cast a minority as a character, Disney knows this, to its credit. A lot of things wrong with corporate Disney in the world, but one thing they really do understand is they get that the world is thus now. And if they're going to put a young woman playing a superhero in a film who's also a Muslim, they have to prepare that kid for the awful, horrible stuff that's going to be coming at them constantly. Right. It's got to be part of the deal, or they're not being responsible. They've got to have a team that's willing to defend her, that's willing to protect her. And I may be passionate about it, but it's just TV. That shouldn't be necessary. Your hate shouldn't come anywhere near those levels. And now I'm starting to think, well, maybe they just maybe just to take it easy on these people, they just put the shit out all at once. So, the people who like it can experience it however they want, but the people who hate it will get it out of their system and move on to something else. And it's shocking for me to say that because I don't prefer my entertainment digested that way, but maybe it'll save a lot of pain and
that's a great point. And it is. It's very sad. It's very sad.
But it is how it is, and it's not getting better. It's getting worse. And it is really, really terrible. Anyway, more on that later. Yay.
All right. So we mentioned Disney. Let's talk about the Marvel Extended Universe and your love of superhero movies and the Marvel movies especially has been well documented.
I'll just say again in brief, just because it's not the movies that I hate so much, it's the lack of cinema involved. These are really hugely expensive TV shows, and they don't have a lot of style to them, and they don't really stand up to movies as we've known them for the last 100 years. I said I wouldn't go too far back in time, but they don't have the staying power of any of that sort of stuff artistically. That I feel like yet that's what all the money is being pumped into, is this stuff. But I do like the idea of world building and stuff. We're nerds and we talk about that stuff all the time on here. And for expensive TV shows, in their defense, they're kind of the best ones because they really deliver the goods in terms of character journeys that you wouldn't be able to have if you didn't have all the interconnectivity of the pieces. And they satisfy later generations' need to fuss over canon and over how things are connected and over how continuity and stuff. And they juggle those impossible balls in a sort of brilliant way. So there's a lot to like about them. Don't get me wrong.
That being said, do you feel like the Marvel Extended Universe is getting too extended?
Well, I mean, as long as they're making money with everything, I think the problem is what's happening, and we've seen it happen. How many people saw the Doctor Strange madness, who hadn't seen the Chick and Robot Man show.
WandaVision?
Yeah, WandaVision.
Yeah. Having knowledge of WandaVision was very
it wasn't necessary, but I'm just saying the danger of having this much interconnected content, and because there's a lot, is people are going to sit out this thing or that thing, and you're going to get to the point that no matter how well constructed your thing is, you're going to start alienating people by them not really following exactly what's going on, or not being able to find nuanced meaning in the things, or even nuanced meaning. Just there's nothing that movie executives are more afraid of than a lack of clarity and audiences asking questions. They don't want that to happen. The last thing a studio executive wants is for you to be confused about something. And movies have suffered, and especially expensive movies have suffered more than any, by that constant interjection of how do we make this clear? How do we make people less frustrated? What can we move around so that they're not confused for the first 20 minutes? Can you imagine not being confused for the first 20 minutes of The Matrix? It would ruin everything. If you had some prologue that explained everything and then jumped into that guy's life. I mean, there used to be a time where we would tolerate not knowing what the hell's going on, and we had some sort of faith that those questions were going to be answered. Now, people are checking their phones. They're turning to the people next to them. What did I miss? Explain this to me, blah, blah, blah. They've been pandered and treated like fools for so long that these films have gotten bigger and dumber and dumber and dumber and dumber. We just talked about Transformers and all the rest of them. Those are the dumbest ones. These are maybe not the smartest ones. I'll reserve that for like the big Christopher Nolan films and some of that. There are still some big films coming out. Denis Villeneuve's films are big, but they're very, very clever. But they're the exception to the rule, really. These are the rule. These Marvel movies, these work. People want to see them. People really enjoy them. They walk out giving pretty good grades. But they have to be careful of the danger of these films absolutely not standing on their own anymore. And it's not just, did you see Avengers 3 before you saw Avengers 4? I mean, the answer to that for 99% of the audience is going to be yes. I mean, you just wander into the end of a 4-part massive movie thing. Somebody did, but almost nobody did. But how many people are watching all these shows and all these episodes and lapping up all this history and stuff that are seeing these movies that are largely, from a character standpoint, at least built off of those? And I think the question is going to be less and less the more and more stuff that they make. So it's not so much, do I want less or do I want less of it? You shouldn't take it from me. I want a lot less of it. The question really is, do the fans of this stuff need a little bit less of it to make this stuff momentous again? And I think, yes, to some degree you kind of do. You got to slow your roll just a little bit. Or if you're going to do all these TV series, you need to let them stand on their own a little bit more, perhaps. And some of them do. I don't know. Does that make any sense?
I just had to cough. Sorry, I had to cough. All right. Yeah. No, I do agree.
You, on the whole, enjoy them much more than me. Do I have a point at all?
No, you absolutely do. Because I was thinking, because I just watched Multiverse of Madness, and I have consumed all of these things. Had I not watched WandaVision, I think there would have been some confusion and just some like, well, why is this such a big deal? Because I mean, WandaVision directly links to
that's why I used that example, because it was the easiest.
But where you could get away with it is in Multiverse of Madness. In one of the universes, we meet this collection of superheroes from other universes, including Captain Carter, which is covered in the animated Disney show Marvel's What If, and it's great. So I could see, you didn't have to know that, but if you're like, oh, Captain Carter, what is that? That's about? That's pretty cool. And then you're on Disney and you realize, oh, hey, there's a whole episode talking about Captain Carter and what that is and what that universe is, and the whole idea of essentially zombie superheroes and
well, that's the thing. You really don't want to pass all of those wonderful magical connections and storytelling. They are really, really fun, but this isn't Lord of the Rings or anything anymore. This enterprise has reached so far beyond that and its shape and its scope that there is questions as to whether these big films are going to start losing their meaning. And because there were a lot of Marvel fans who really, really loved Madness, and Madness didn't really get the audience scores that it was used to, and that was weird to see, because it's usually the opposite. Usually something like Guardians of the Galaxy 2, critics will take it, a lot of them will take it, some will leave it, but the audiences will come out going, awesome, awesome, A+. And you're not seeing that of late, because and it's going to continue based up, based upon the directors that they get. Yeah, based on the directors that they get, because there are some directors that clearly, Taika Waititi, maybe Sam Raimi, with this latest Doctor Strange film, where their directing took
styles
over pretty late in the process, but a Sam Raimi film has its own feel. Yeah. I'm not a huge Taika Waititi fan, but in some ways I am, but I have mixed feelings about him. We'll just say that.
What I'm saying is,
that's great about him is that you kind of know when you're watching a movie of his. Yeah. So it's not homogenized, which is great, because things really need to get less homogenized in a hurry.
And that's,
that would make
and that's what it's going to be. And that's going to be the real trick of all of this is finding these directors who have these unique styles, but still can play in that sandbox, play in that Marvel sandbox where everything will still work together. I think that's one of the things that maybe didn't work, or certainly didn't work as well with Eternals, and now I'm blanking on her name. The director of Eternals,
director of Nomadland.
Director of Nomadland.
You made it,
Chloe Zhao. Yeah, Chloe Zhao. Yeah. It's whereas she made a big epic action film, Marvel superhero film, but it's like her directorial style didn't really fit in, it didn't really work in the sandbox. And so it will be, that will be the test is, and that's all on Kevin Feige, who, running the whole thing, is to find directors who are going to have distinct, unique.
Yeah, how do you know
styles.
that until you make the movie?
No, you don't. And but it's like, well, because Eternals didn't do as well, and Eternals was not liked by a lot of people, because of the movie being boring and whatever.
Less Oscar-winning directors from now on.
Well, no, but I'm just saying it's now it's the question of, okay, well, what do we do with the Eternals? Because the Eternals plays into the larger Marvel Cinematic Extended Universe.
One thing that's nice about the MCU, and then we should move on because we could spend all day on it. But one thing that's nice about it is the mistakes that have happened in it, or I don't want to call them mistakes, but the things that have been not accepted by the audiences in general, especially the intenser members of the audiences of the thing, have been revitalized or have been revisited in ways in the continuing story that redeem them somewhat as a whole. And I think that, I can only say for my own part, but I like to see that more than I like to see shit just discarded because this so-and-so fans said they didn't like that. Yeah. I think we sat through that Rise of Skywalker and just saw it didn't just have a checklist of things it wanted to sort of improve from the previous film. It had things it wanted to address from the previous film that it wanted to shoot down. And it did that not the whole movie, but about a half dozen times where you were just like, ew. I found that really gross. The one movie like commenting unnecessarily on the beats from the previous one.
Yeah. To
give the audience their little, I told you the holdo maneuver was crap or whatever. It's like, that's really the grossest thing when you revisit those, to watch them again. That's not good storytelling. That's pandering to a bunch of angry idiots. And you really should do that if you can help it. Maybe Eternals can be saved.
Yeah.
We'll see. Right, well, I'd like to see them try.
Yeah, I would too. Speaking of Star Wars, I want to ask this question. And there's another thing, and then I'm gonna skip a couple of these questions because we're running out of time.
No, you could just make me answer them quickly.
All right, well, we'll try that. Well, when will there be another Star Wars movie? We're getting series after series.
That's sort of related and doesn't. There will be. Taika Waititi's making another Star Wars movie, although they're not making it yet. But it goes along with what we were saying. Star Wars on TV is ruining the brand. It's making it a super not special thing. And there aren't 8 million years of universe building and comic books and 2 trillion characters with Star Wars. There's this central thing that we followed. And the need of even the most disparate bits of these sort of expanded universe projects having to be connected to those in some ways, killing it. It's killing it. And so I don't know what they're going to do. We'll see. But I just know that Star Wars isn't benefiting from the TV shows the way Marvel is. Those things are living together in peace, I guess I should say. The Star Wars TV shows on the whole, I think, have been pretty good. I think they're getting a bad rap in terms of the quality of the stuff themselves. But too much of it, and it all having to lead to this very narrow, all these tributaries that have to get to this same spot. You got to lay off of that and have some imagination. Waititi's bit is supposed to be completely different, and another part of the world has nothing to do with anything. That'll be welcome. And
here's how it's going to tie back into everything, though, because I think Taika Waititi is going to be doing a Bossk film.
Well,
Bossk, make it about Bossk.
Has Bossk shown up in any of these things?
Bossk hasn't been around.
He has not. He's name dropped in Solo, I've noticed, but that's the only. Yeah.
So John Williams is retiring from film scoring after scoring Indiana Jones 5.
He's not retiring from composing, but he said he's not likely to do another whole film after Indy 5. And that's a significant thing for him to say. He's been doing all the Spielberg movies. He's been doing, and then he switched to every other one here in the last half dozen or so, and not doing much else except these big tent poles that he feels he created and feels very close to. And what did he say? He said, well, if Harrison Ford can stop doing Indiana Jones, and compared to me, he's a young man still. Harrison's about to turn 80. He's like, then surely I can walk away from this too. It's like he's just had a hard time making peace with somebody else doing a Star Wars movie. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't want to do any more Star Wars movies, but I don't want anyone else to do any Star Wars movies either. Like, I don't want. So, we'll talk more about John Williams. I don't want to talk about his mortality or whatever, but he's an old man, and there will come a day where we'll just be tripping over ourselves, worshiping him. Just give him a little worship before he kicks off this mortal coil, and just say that he's the sound of all this stuff. You know what I mean? And the idea, the unmitigated gall, Joel, that the industry would think stuff should be less like John Williams is insulting, and the quality of the industry in general has paid the price for it.
Yeah.
So there's hardly anyone in the movie business I admire more than John.
Two questions. The first one I'm hoping we'll be able to answer quickly, because it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and then the last question,
like drop zone question, or
no, not drop zone question. But this is this goes back. Netflix. This goes back to the whole. We were talking about people are just going to wait for Lightyear to come out on streaming.
I really do think that's going to happen, and I think it's going to be a massive streaming hit when it first becomes available.
And because here's also the deal: the length of time between movie and streaming is so much less now. Multiverse of Madness is already on streaming. Weirdly, but but No Way Home, I don't believe Spider-Man No Way Home is anyway. But anyway, the Batman, the Robert Pattinson
Sony,
Batman.
it's because Sony doesn't have its own streaming service that it owns. That's why. If it did, that would be part of the exclusive content, and it would have just been 3 months later, and it would have shown up too. So we're getting this much more compressed time, and I think that is. So it's allowing. So I mean, the good of it is it's allowing people who want that movie theater experience to see the film in the theater, but then the people who don't care as much about the theater experience or do not want to go to the theater for whatever reason, but they can still sort of feel like they're in on the train. They're not, they aren't catching things so much after the fact. So that's the good. The bad is, of course, well, you're going to put something out in the theater, and people are going to go like, well, I'm just going to be able to see it in a couple months on Disney Plus, or I'm going to be able to see it on HBO you're left
Max.
with, you have to find the magic thing, the Top Gun Maverick thing, the thing that will transcend that which, if we knew how to pick that, because it really is once, twice a year, maybe 4 times a year tops thing where you can say this thing's going to be on, Paramount Plus in 2 months, and yet it still has a massive, huge opening or whatever. And how do we know what that is? And how do we not, and even a Pixar film that was critically beloved, really, Lightyear, can't sort of survive that easy access, when it's offered. And even in a summer like this, where the blockbusters it's not real crowded summer. There isn't one coming out every week. It's like every 3 weeks. There's stuff coming out that people are seeing, but it has changed things. And we all said it would. And the theater people who owned theaters in America said that it would change everything. And you have to try and maintain these windows just for us, or that you'll have no place to go see this. You talked about the theater closing in your neighborhood. Theaters have not survived COVID. And the fact that only a Maverick style hit is the thing that's going to keep a few of them alive. Having one of those at reasonable intervals, and that all the little movies don't sell enough tickets to support anything, is right where everyone said we would be. And here we are. And what are we doing about it? Nothing. It's getting worse. So if you love the theatrical experience, which I don't, I love movies, man. I do, but I don't like the theatrical experience. People are dicks, and if you sit in a room full of 100 of them, at least 25 of them are going to drive you insane. And I just don't feel it. I'll go see something on opening night because I feel like you got a good bet that these people really give a crap, that they're here for a reason, and you can count on them to more or less, but more or less behave themselves. Going to see something in the afternoon, it just all the stuff I used to do, there's no civility out there amongst audiences, so I don't play anymore, so I don't care. But I'm willing to wait. I'm willing to wait 3 months. I'm willing to wait my turn. So that theaters survive in America. That's what I want. Even if I'm not buying tickets and popcorn anymore, I want them to survive because they cultivate something that when it's lost will be impossible to get back. And then we'll be doing a whole show about how horrible that is. So there you go. That's not a short take, but as short as that's
short. That was short-ish. All right. So final question of the show today has to do with cancel culture. And
my favorite.
Our favorite, everyone's favorite subject. And there's this, we had solicited questions, both friends of the show, Rob and Brian. Both of them had similar questions, and so I kind of.
What are the questions?
I mean,
just
specifically,
so that they get their take in the show.
Sure, absolutely. Brian's was specifically: should Amber Heard be hired again, or should she have to miss out on work? Rob phrased it as, give us your take on cancel culture. Can we still watch the films of Kevin Spacey? What about performers being fired and let go after one allegation, i.e. should Johnny Depp have been removed from the Fantastic Beasts films for one allegation, which has now not necessarily proven true? So we have, it is this idea of, so there's actually two questions in there. One where we have people who we know that they have done horrible, horrible things. The Kevin Spaceys, the Cosbys, the Bryan Singers, can we see
what did Bryan Singer do that was so horrible?
Bryan Singer forcibly had sex with several young men. Yeah,
but has he been charged with that?
I believe he's been able to avoid charge. So
he hasn't even been charged. I just want to point out there's some differences here. Cosby was convicted, and then his conviction was overturned on appropriate grounds, even though we know he's guilty of sin as to what he
was
did.
Just found guilty again, though. He
is guilty. I mean, he's guilty. I don't want to get into the Cosby case specifically. We'll be here all day, but there are people that we know who are guilty. There are people who have been accused of things that haven't even been charged. it's un-American and really stupid for us to treat a list of bad actors like that, like they're all in the same boat, or like they all did things that were equally bad, or like that they're all along the process in the same place where, you know, Bill Cosby shouldn't be let near a TV camera again. He shouldn't go on stage. Yeah, cancel his ass. I mean, send him to prison. He's guilty. Bryan Singer's not in that boat. He may have done a lot of bad things. He was there for a lot of bad things. We know that. We know a lot of stuff, but we don't know everything the way we know everything for Cosby, who was actually tried in a court of law, even if the initial conviction was overturned. And Spacey hasn't really been charged with anything either until just recently. But at least with Spacey, we've got tons of testimonials from people who appear to be legit telling these stories throughout history. And Kevin Spacey, and this is where Johnny Depp, maybe there's a parallel here. Now, I'm not saying Johnny Depp's done what Spacey did, but Johnny Depp's acted like a dork on tons of productions. He's caused productions all kinds of problems. He's got issues outside of whether he was an abusive boyfriend or not, which it seems he clearly was. Was he some wife beater, obnoxious, I'm hitting my girlfriend all the time and you know what I mean? No, not really in the traditional sense. And of course, he didn't think his whole life should be brought down because he has a temper or because he did such and such on such a date or whatever. You know, it's complicated. You have to, what sucks is that you don't want to listen to the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial. I didn't. I read a little bit about it, but I didn't sit there every day listening to it. I couldn't, but no, it's the simple answer to the Amber Heard thing. She should not be not allowed to act anymore. That's absurd. Why? Yeah. What did she do that would preclude her from doing that? Even her own co-stars and her own director on the Aquaman 2 movie tried. It seems like they may have failed, but for a while they tried and succeeded to save her footage and save her work on that film from being just axed. It's just to the approval of the sort of Johnny Depp army. Remember with the Oscars this year added it's like a fan voting category, and the movie that I can't remember the name of it. The movie that made it was the Johnny Depp biopic about that photographer. Because all the Johnny Depp people came out and basically rigged the voting for it. Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's a mob and a cult, and I don't like a mob. And so when we come on the show and we talk about cancel culture, you know, there's people out there saying, well, people aren't being canceled. That's absurd. People are being canceled. That is sort of happening. It's to different degrees in every different case. Yeah. But let's start with this is happening. The mob does come after you. They do disapprove of you. Sometimes it's for legit stuff. Sometimes it's for not much. And they come after you and they pound you until they make you go away. That's what a mob wants. And they're not satisfied until you go away. They're not, they don't want to hear your apology. The mob has never accepted a single apology from a celebrity who did something wrong or said something bad. It's never happened. So apologizing doesn't help. Feeling bad doesn't help. Saying you're going to change doesn't help. Like what
it didn't even help. It didn't even help Lizzo, who, when she has her latest song, where she went back in the studio, wrote new lyrics, recorded it, and said, "This is the song now. I will never. I am terribly sorry. I didn't know that was a thing."
It's a great example.
And then people are, and most people were like, "That great," but then there's a giant chunk like, "You should have never done it in the first place."
That argument was over the word spaz, which is a word I use all the time. So it left off the page to me. I usually use it in reference to myself. Nevertheless, that's a fun word that I use all the time, usually as a verb and less as a noun, but still, it's a fun word to say. You know what I'm saying? It is hurtful. If you've been called that or you've been labeled that, and in school you've been bullied with that word, like any of the words you can use that are detrimental to people, it's hurtful. But does that mean we cancel the word? And do we take somebody like Lizzo, truly, like what happened at Lin-Manuel Miranda? Like, these things are terrifying, that the mob came after these people for these reasons, and that both of them immediately bowed to the mob, and rightly so. Lizzo, she needs these people. They're a big part of the fan base, but the reality is they're not the big part of the world. Most people were unaware of that word being in that song, wouldn't have been upset about it, didn't care that she made the effort to change it. Most people were not affected by it, but she had to act. I sympathize with her.
Yeah, I mean, but in terms of, she didn't do the I apologize if anyone was offended by that. Right. She said this is wrong. I didn't know it was wrong. Now I do. I'm changing it.
Right.
And that is how you apologize, because your intent doesn't matter. Your intent doesn't matter. It's how an item is received that matters.
I disagree, Joel. Your intent does matter. Your intent absolutely does matter. The idea that that somebody who intentionally caused harm, like Kevin Spacey, and somebody who tripped over their tongue and said something stupid are in the same boat is ridiculous. And I know that's a popular thing. Like, to get to the offense of the thing and to truly empathize, you need to get over the intent. That's what the intent doesn't matter means. And that's right. And I do honor that. I try to in the way that I act. But the intent doesn't matter is a sentence with words in it that means something. And when you say it, it's crazy. You're not trying to offend somebody, or you're deliberately trying to offend somebody, is two totally different kind of people. Ignorance is different than hate. And if you're going to treat the world like it isn't, and you're going to treat everybody on the Twitterverse like they're the same, you're not recognizing what the world is and where these people are coming at you from. And I find
when you say
that's
intent, frustrating. When you say intent does matter, then that's where you get the I'm sorry if anyone was offended. That was not you. But you have to.
But I've seen much more recognize sincere
No, I get
that.
Okay, but you have to acknowledge. Yeah, you have to acknowledge how it was received, and that is where this has happened. It's not, hey, I'm sorry if you were offended, but that's more on you, because that was not my intent. And but no, it is you can say that, and it doesn't matter if it's a word that I use all the time, and this is this and this. If someone receives that and is genuinely hurt, then your intention is irrelevant.
Right.
And so
an artist censoring themselves deliberately in that way to get back into good graces with people who got really, really upset over something very small is spooky to me. I don't like any of that. And I really don't like the lack of forgiveness on anybody's part. If a chance at redemption and forgiveness isn't part of this, if these people have to go into exile for years and you're still wounded by it and still reliving your trauma over their actions many, many years later, when these are people you don't know and have never actually interacted with personally, that's cancel culture. I mean, that's what it is. You can't deny what it is. It is absolutely happening.
To be clear, also, Bryan Singer has been involved in, just quickly looking here, 6 lawsuits and allegations that have either been settled out of court or were dismissed because of not enough evidence. So just to go back to that name, since
Bryan Singer's story, just so everybody knows, since I brought him up as an exception, because I don't want to. Bryan, when he first came to Hollywood, they had these these gay Hollywood orgies, basically, and he was at a ton of these parties where a ton of young aspiring actors, staff, like everybody, were really treated like meat, basically. And it's when you read some of the accounts, it is really, really awful. So I don't know. So I'm not making excuses for him. I'm simply saying that, I've seen these lists, and they're lists of these people, and they're all done different things. And you can't just stick people on a list. Yeah. If we're not going to be nuanced about how we talk about these things, and we shouldn't be talking about it. And yet the conversation about this stuff, the reason it's so difficult, the reason we don't bring the celebrity gossip stuff or the legal stuff up on the show is because, in a large degree, we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to that stuff. But it's I lament the loss of the degrees of things. I mean, that's a struggle for me. Yeah, the intent doesn't matter. You have to, if you're not apologizing unless you recognize that you hurt somebody. I agree. But that's nuanced and tricky. You know, defund the police is something you can talk about. But when you just say that, that means something to 50% of the world that it doesn't mean to you. And they freak out about it. And the words aren't helping you. They're not helping you in that case. Nobody's going to win an argument like that. You're only going to entrench yourselves. Right. We need to talk, and we need to live in a world where a sincere apology actually is accepted, because right now they're not being. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, whatever horrors they went through, it doesn't sound fun, but it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like it should be the end of their lives. Like there should be other chapters. If you don't want to see their movies, I get it. If Hollywood wants to treat them with kid gloves for a while, I understand that too. But yes, they should be able to find their way back to the light somehow. Please, let's not just allow for that possibility. Let's hope for that for them. That's what I want.
And here's hopefully the last thing I'll say about this is there are 4 million things that go into an actor getting a role, and talent is just one tiny little bit of it. And so yeah, like you said, Hollywood will have to handle them with kid gloves for a while, because we don't know. No one knows. People in the industry, I should say, do not know how much their names, things are tainted. You'll see Johnny Depp and Amber Heard probably pop up in small little things, in maybe uncredited cameos and things. It's maybe not Amber Heard because she's not as big of a star, but I bet Johnny starts popping up in stuff in uncredited or in surprise things over the next few years. But
we'll see.
But yeah, maybe. But that's how they'll test.
Just from an industry standpoint, that doesn't seem like the way to let Johnny back to the party, is to have him surprise an audience that doesn't want to see him in something you didn't know he was in. That comedian that invited Chappelle to drop in on his show unannounced?
Yeah,
got
John
his
Mulaney.
Audience. Yeah, got his audience really, really mad at him
But yet he just sold out 3 straight nights at Madison Square Garden, so it's not like
Delaney.
John Mulaney,
Mulaney. But he didn't get canceled. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, surprise may not be the way to deal with this. That's all I'm saying. Which to me is kind of what a cameo is.
Yeah. So I mean, but
John Mulaney shouldn't be canceled. I agree.
My point was, and I muddled it. I was trying to agree with you. There is going to be a handling of kid gloves, because there are a zillion things that go into whether a person gets a role or not. And unfortunately, it is, how is this person going to be received by the audience? And if
certainly on the level of stuff that those two actors were doing.
Yeah.
Even Amber, who's not like some huge star, she was in big movies. She was a big part of big movies. That's been her career, TV shows. Johnny was named above the title opening giant movies for ages. So he's on a different tier, but they're both still Hollywood players basically. And I don't know what's going to happen, but let's see how they do, and let's give it a break, and let's try not, I don't know. Let's just try and talk to one another and listen to one another. It isn't helpful what we're going through. This we kind of can't have this keep happening, and it's not just from a Hollywood standpoint or from this actor, or this musician, or this comedian. It's everywhere. I'll say one thing: we're living in a world where everything we're confronted with, and this week says it as profoundly as has been said in 6 years, and it's been a hell of a 6 years. You have to be on a side of these issues. You can't ride the fence, and you can't have a bunch of false equivalencies, and you can't just shrug shit off by saying, well, both sides do this and everybody's equally guilty. I mean, you got to look at each thing and pick something and be on that side. It really annoys me. You know who annoys me most?
Okay, real quick.
This is me.
Real quick. I got it, because I have a show here. I have a show to do. We got to make it go quick here.
Now then, I'll save it there. You need to. We need to pick a side, but we need to still listen to each other and talk to each other. It's hard. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's some wisdom fix to the situation. I don't see the situation getting fixed. No, I see us getting worse and worse, getting further and further apart, getting more and more angry at each other. That's what I think is going to happen. But I know that the answer is not to share a bunch of memes that show the other side's hypocrisy. You need to use your own words now more than ever. Say what you feel. And like we say on the show, tell your story to these people. Say how you feel, tell your story, see if they listen, see how they respond, and keep talking. That, if you take anything from this angry, ranty show, tell your story. That's what we celebrate here, and the story will affect people. It may not change their ideology, but your story can affect them. Your clever little saying that somebody said at some point that you admire, that ain't going to change anything. That's just digging deeper into the ground right where you're standing, and no one's going to see you down there that disagrees with you. Please use your own words. Don't just share a bunch of nonsense, and see what happens. Things might get better. At least they'll get a little better in our own bubbles. You can back me up on that, Rachel.
I think that's the perfect place to cap this off.
Thanks.
All right, folks. Yeah, absolutely. All right, everybody. Reach out to us at The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan on Facebook, page on Facebook, at Ask Joel and Ryan, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and here on YouTube. If you are watching this, like, subscribe. Wherever if you are listening to this, please like and subscribe. Thanks for indulging us this week on just a few some questions being asked. Next week we will get back to more. Next week there is no show because it's July 4th.
Happy July 4th, everybody!
Happy Independence Day!
Happy birthday, America!
Happy birthday, America! And then we'll be back with some more fun stuff, talking about some summer movies. We have some fun shows coming up. Jaws sort of rip-offy films. We're going to do another movie club. Not movie club, but a double feature. We're already in the works for that. We'll probably talk to Sean to get a movie club and everything on the books here soon. So so we're hoping to get a whole bunch of fun stuff coming up for the rest of the summer. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Good.
Break a leg, Joel.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.